There we go.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
200,000.
200,000.
There we go. That's how we do that.
That's how we do that.
We got a vacuum cleaner, haven't we?
We've got Fraser.
Okay. That'll do. Hey guys, welcome to That Pedal Show VCQ. Dan here.
Mick here. Hello. Well, yes, as if you hadn't guessed, we've passed through an almighty milestone on the YouTube subscriber count where our ad revenue stays exactly the same. Nothing changes whatsoever. But thank you for subscribing.
Yeah.
I did find out right at the last minute, one of the last subscribers was my mother-in-law
Really?
in Greece.
Oh,
She said,
bless her.
I saw you were nearly getting there. You had about 4 to go, so I subscribed. She said, I'm never going to watch. So I don't know if that counts. I don't know if YouTube should strip us of our subscriber count.
200,000 minus 1. Brilliant.
Good.
Okay, that's enough of that.
We should have some sort of alcoholic beverage, but given that it's 10 a.m.
What? Just beer then?
Yeah. In Russia, beer is basically a...
Breakfast.
Yeah.
Okay. So Stig Nordberg, Matt Rich, Arnold Deal III, Roger the Shrubber, Rich B. Moore, and a few others all wished us congratulations on 200,000. They'd noticed that on the weekend, so thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it. Right, so this weekend's video, or video on Friday, was the video that we shot at ATB Guitars, where we all had a moment.
Yeah. It was a spiritual moment,
It was a spiritual moment.
which we'll get into. Yeah. Will Richardson, Matthew Collis Long, and Moog 1000 all asked the same question, which was, brilliant show, guys. Could each of you, including Simon, he's not here, but we'll make it up, pick one of those guitars to add to your respective rigs and 3 that would replace all of your guitars?
If I could take one of those guitars home, it would be the Jazzmaster.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
58 Jazzmaster.
Yeah, 58 Jazzmaster. You got to remember that the telly was, I think, something like 14 grand or something, but that Jazzmaster was crazy, crazy, crazy numbers. But yes, 3 guitars for me would be the Jazzmaster, the telly, and the 53 Les Paul.
The gold top or the 55 black one?
Probably the gold top.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the one for me would be the 62 Strat, even though it was one of the least expensive Strats in there.
That was magic. You played magic on that
Well, a
thing.
few people have said a few things about that. The 53 gold top, I would agree, and probably the 59 335 to Sunburst one.
Yeah.
I mean, rest of days.
Yeah.
No worries. Baker family, the recording technique for this episode sounds incredible. What did you do differently? We didn't do anything differently. It was just a very roomy room. So we had the 2 Sontronics Delta ribbon mics on the Magnatone amp. They were left and right because it's a stereo thing when the vibrato gets going, more of which later. And the 5E3 had a Royer 121, and we did our mid-side room mics as normal. So it was the same technique, just a very roomy room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very nice. Eric Morton says, you guys play nice guitars all the time. Does an outing like this cure your gas temporarily, or does it throw gas on the fire of your gas when you get home? Great show. I'm going to cry now. Miss my classic vibe telly. It makes you realize what is possible, I think, for me. Love my guitars, love Red, and the guitars we have are great. But when you play guitars like that, and you can feel things being drawn out of you.
Yeah.
That's, man.
It's good in a way. It's sort of, for me, it kills this new variant of this thing might solve that problem. Because having gone through, numerous rounds of that over the years, you just get a bit more sober to the new guitar experience, and you understand that actually it's not about seeing a picture of a guitar and really wanting it, although that will never change. It's more the
It's velvet.
Velvet. It's nice.
Very
isn't it?
sharp,
Yeah,
mate.
I don't think it's
Very sharp.
Thanks.
Sorry, it's just gleaming at me, and I thought, just one of the things you just have to just reach out and gently stroke.
just one of those things. So it doesn't cure it, but it does it sobers you up a bit to it, and you realise that you can't make judgments on groups of guitars generally. It's more about that one guitar, whether it's a new guitar or an old guitar.
Yeah.
So it sort of sobers you up to that a little bit.
Yep.
Luke Anthony, I've hankered after a vintage guitar for a while now, but I've always been wary of paying massively over the odds for something which is not authentic. How do you make sure you're getting the real deal? And also, how do you keep tabs on current prices for these vintage instruments? I'm terrified of paying a tidy sum only to discover that it's not what I thought it was. Congrats on 200k. Thank you, Luke. You buy from a reputable source is how you do it.
Yeah, do your research. But most importantly, you have to love the guitar that you buy.
Yeah. If you, I mean, there are collectors obviously, and people do collect guitars, and that's the thing. But we're not really in that world. We're in the. If we were ever going to buy a vintage guitar, it would be to play.
Sure.
So, yeah. What else would we say on that front? I know people who've been dealing guitars for many, many years and say they wouldn't go near the vintage market with a barge pole.
Wow.
Because the faking is so good these days.
It's so, yeah. You got to really know stuff. And that's one thing, you know, when you go down there, you know, when we're having the conversation about the checking and stuff, and Matt was saying, Mike was saying, instantly, you know, so you've got to really know stuff.
Yeah. And a reputable dealer, it's more than their reputation is worth to sell something hooky. There have been many non-reputable dealers over the years. So anyway, let's move on.
Ted Air says, why is Dan surprised by the 58 Telly's pickup selector position? Is the pickup selector different? Yeah, so in the original Telly's, you had, in the back position was the back pickup. In the middle position was the neck pickup. And all the way forward was the neck pickup with the tone rolled off. So they were going for some sort of jazz thing. So there was no middle position.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when that changed, but I think if you buy a strict reissue Fender, it used to come with that as an option.
Sure.
If you wanted that. So all those awesome mid-position Telly sounds weren't available in the first days. Ben Standifer, Pedro Martins, Brian Lewis, all want to know, and lots more people actually all want to know where the GoFundMe page is for the 62 Strat. I was very touched about that people were. There's one guy, I think one of these guys actually said, "I've got $50 if you want it," and it's like, oh my god, it makes us feel all warm and fuzzy when people say things like that. Thank you, but to do that for, you know, Dan and I both live relatively comfortable lives. We're not wealthy, but you know, we also don't have very many problems in our lives. So if you're going to give it any money to anyone, give it to someone who's got some real problems. Sure. I would say, just to be slightly
well, my problem is I don't have an old telly. So, you know, checks and balances, swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, fair enough.
On that subject, lots of people are encouraging Nick to sell his motorcycle and buy the 62. So G Champ 12, John Redknapp, John Smith, Rebeshe, M. Lowe, Ash Walker, Kelly B, Mike Host, and loads more. Yeah,
the reason for that is I said I can't buy this guitar because I've just bought a new motorbike, and everyone's going, sell the motorbike, buy the guitar. I put this in because I'm in this really fortunate position, and the only thing I have in my life apart from my wife is guitar.
Right.
I don't have any kids. I don't have any life really other than guitar. So it's important that I have something in my life that is not guitar. Otherwise, I go insane. That's what the motorbike's for.
Okay.
And it is, bizarrely, it's actually more valuable to me than another guitar.
Right.
Any other guitar, actually.
Sure.
At this point. Sorry, a bit serious, but...
Fair enough. All right. David Tompkins doesn't quite agree. He says, we're just listening with our eyes. Okay.
Yeah. So the way the brain works is it amalgamates all the senses that we know about. 6, 5, we always get this wrong, don't we?
12.
The ones we know about, amalgamates those with all the ones we don't yet know about. And there are many senses that we don't yet know about that logical thought can't really explain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you sense with all of your senses.
Yeah.
And that includes your eyes. So hearing with your eyes, yeah, you probably do, actually. And to try and go, well, if you do a blind list, this is why I can't stand blind listening tests, because if you cut off one of your senses, all you do is you cut down your sensory experience of something that is experiential.
Sure.
And that's just madness to me. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why don't you just experience something and be in the moment of it? So logic's not for music.
Very interesting.
I don't think, anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No,
sorry.
very interesting.
Mixed moans. I'm feeling all puffed
Mixed
up.
moans.
All puffed up because we're on 200k down. I think I can rule the world now. That's what that's all about.
Reckless Toboggan says, I noticed that all the guitars you played in this video have the pickup height set very close down to the body of the guitar. Is there a difference with the age of the guitar that makes this preferable? It seems to me that most of the guitars these days, set from the factory anyway, have their pickups set generally closer to the strings than what I'm observing in this video. So the further away the pickup is from the strings, the less magnetic pull that the pickups have on the strings, which means that they will sustain and vibrate longer.
For single coils.
For single coils, you do have this thing with the inverse square law of that made it. So every time that you halve the distance from the pickup to the string, you double the amount of output. So, it's great getting that less magnetic pull, but you do reduce the output of the pickup because it's just further away from the strings. However, yeah, it's lots of the times that you don't want crazy output from the guitar, and a simple fix is putting the pickup further away from the strings. Now, I don't know if just from years of these guitars being played, they've just found the way that they sound the best.
I really did notice that on the Strats in particular, the pickups were set low compared to the way you normally see them. If you sat there with your guitar adjusting the pickups, you probably put them to as high as they'll possibly go before you start getting wolf tones and stuff, and assume that's the best because it's the loudest. The older I get, the more it seems to me that the weaker the guitar in a way, and I don't mean weak, I mean the more balanced the guitar in terms of the sound the guitar itself is making and then the sound that the pickups are making. If the pickups overpower a guitar, I tend not to like it, personally speaking. Whereas if the pickups sort of sit within the whole instrument and you've got to amplify it a bit more because it's not very loud, that to me is where dynamic lives. That's the dynamic of the instrument.
Sure.
Whereas if it's all just all the time, it's very hard to...
It's like a compressor's turned on.
Yeah. So that's an interesting observation. I'll get into that when I change the pickups on Blue. Okay. And we'll see if we can learn anything in that. Chord the Seeker. This is nothing to do with the video, but I'm hoping you'll answer it in VCQ. Yes, we will, Chord. The fluorescent lights in my house cause so much hum in my tube amp that it makes single coils almost unplayable. I know it's the lights because when I turn them off, the hum goes away. So short of practicing in the dark or changing the lights, what can I do to eliminate the interference?
Interesting. Okay. So, yes, fluorescent lights, if you're using dimmer switches with transformers in them.
Dimmers are a nightmare.
Absolute nightmare, and they kick out so much interference. The magnetic field of the pickups, it just picks up all that stuff. It's tricky because every time I've gone to shield a guitar, it's always made it sound bad. Every single time.
You got to decide what's more important to you: the sound of the guitar, or your lights. I think, and if try first thing to do is shift position, right? Because there'll be one position in the 360 degree.
It'll be two.
Two positions in the 360 degree rotation where the hum goes away, basically. If the noise is coming from one source. If you're also sat next to a computer monitor, then you're screwed basically because there's nothing you can do.
Sure. But the other thing to try as well, if it is purely the fluorescent lights, you can change the fluorescent lights
for LEDs.
You can do LEDs, or you can just depending on how they're wired. But if you want to take out that fluorescent light and just put something else in there, that's
dimmer switch up full rather than down a bit.
But even helps. It does help, but it doesn't eliminate that problem.
And then if you actually
candles,
you don't really
candles are really good.
Candles are awesome. If you don't love the sound of the guitar, then get some stacked single coils or some silent pickup options. Personally don't love them, but that's a purely personal opinion, so that's another option.
Sure. Right, here we go. Mark M, Fugamente, Higgledy-Piggledy and others said, OMG, take your rings off, it's killing me.
Lots of people moaning about the sound of our wedding rings up and down the frets on the edge of the guitar necks. Sounds worse than it is, actually.
Yeah.
It's just the edge of the frets. It's fine, don't worry. Probably. I'm not sure if Mike was thinking the same thing. But interestingly, Mike wasn't freaking out at all, was he? We
No,
were
he was
picking up
loving
those
it.
guitars, even the ones that cost £100,000, handing them around. He wasn't in the slightest bit phased, unless he's just the coolest cookie in the world, and he's actually.
I think he was heavily medicated from when we walked in.
Yeah, he needed.
Just had to be prepared.
He
So,
needed
oh
to be.
my word, Dan and Mick are coming in. Help.
Matt Lee says, "What effects are you using at 1505? Is it a Leslie? It sounds absolutely amazing. It's actually the stereo vibrato circuit in the Magnatone.
Magnatone.
So the Magnatone, that particular amp, is like a 2640 or 12. So I can't even remember the numbers. Anyway, it's stereo Magnatone amp, and we mic'd it stereo too. So you're hearing the stereo. It's harmonic tremolo, basically,
magic.
isn't it?
Absolutely magic." Roger Plock says, "I think Simon needs that 53. Just saying. Great episode, Per Normal Guys." Yeah, actually, it was Simon that sorted that day out for us.
Yeah.
He went in there. He was down there on another shoot.
And we're very grateful to him for doing it.
Yeah.
Similarly, Michael Ross. Hi, Michael, if you ever watch this. The 53 Les Paul is the platonic ideal of electric guitar sound.
That's magic.
I kind of think I agree with you, actually. Yeah.
Even just acoustically,
Yeah.
we're all set there going, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Right, Ward O'Shea says, "Fantastic episode. When you played the 1959 335, you mentioned 50s wiring. Please elaborate on the sonic aesthetics of this versus modern wiring. I'm about to rewire a guitar and wondering if I should wire it this way. Many thanks."
50s wiring is a different way of wiring a 4-pot Gibson guitar. It comes into its own when you use vintage specific pickups and you use the right value tone caps and all of that. So it's an old school thing of doing it. It's where one of the wires, and I can't remember which, is wired to the second lug of the pot, not the first one. That's as much as I know
it's
about
just
it.
changing
technically.
around the first and second, and it changes the way that the impedance from the pickups works, gets to the output.
It's generally thought, and it's never good to be too general, but it's generally thought that the guitar sounds lighter, airier, gives you more options with the mix of the controls, and just generally puts you in that vintage world more than modern wiring. But I don't know if it's worth a show, but I literally always prefer 50s wiring.
Yeah, me too.
Just makes the guitar sound less thick.
Yeah, well, yeah.
More dynamic.
Yep.
If that's what you want. And that needs to tee in with the rest of the guitar. So if it's a particularly lightweight guitar, a very resonant guitar, then that's all going to be amplified in terms of making that guitar sound more airy and vintage. On the subject of which, old Les Pauls, to me, always sound lighter and airier and less kind of bloated and thick than modern Les Pauls. So
the sound of that 335, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
We were speculating as to why that might be, but I guess there's probably a question on that as we go on.
Nigel Williams says, "Mick commented that many of the vintage Strats don't have the harsh high end on the bridge pickup. He mentioned 50s wiring, which I thought was a Gibson thing and might be expected to make it worse. What is causing the harsh high end on modern Strats? Is it pickups, different wiring, or different components?"
Oh, I mean, you could talk for hours on this. People who make properly vintage spec Strat pickups and have their own materials made say that the new materials just aren't the same as the old materials. Plus, you've got however many years of, what do they call it, degaussing
of the pickups, yeah.
where the magnets get weaker, etc., etc., etc. Physical factors, blah, 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 over the years. What I find interesting is that those guitars, when they made all those hit records, weren't old guitars.
Of course.
They were new guitars.
Yeah, they were.
So...
Yep. Jimi Hendrix played new guitars.
Yeah, so that I find that kind of interesting as well, and it is this mystique of the old guitar. Having said that, I do find that, you know, an off the production line, run of the mill, modern components vintage pickup set does sound palpably different than you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's hot water right there. Why don't they sound so harsh? The old ones don't know. They just don't. Having said that, the one I played couple of guitars in vintage and rare guitars in Bath a few months ago, and they were both really not harsh but very strident, aggressive sounding guitars.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
But not in a way that it wasn't like plasticky hard, which is what a lot of modern Strat pickups are. So then what do we get into? The wood, the finish, the hardware, despite what lots of people say it absolutely all does make a difference.
Definitely, no question.
Without any shadow of a doubt. PGSGBC, regular commenter and asker of questions. Given that we are doing away with words like better and should, hooray, it's finally sinking in, Dan. Would you feel confident in saying that reissue and modern attempts on these classics is getting us close enough that the average player needn't feel he or she is doing without?
Good question.
I think that question could also be a commentary on modern amps and pedals. I wonder if your time travel might help us to be more content today. So are reissue guitars good enough?
Of course. It's the thing is, I would encourage everyone, if they get the opportunity, to go and try a couple of really nice old guitars, because they're not all great.
No, that's the problem, isn't it? Same as all new guitars aren't great, and the
Yeah.
same as when people say things like, "Oh, insert brand here are awesome." Well, I've played examples of guitars from every single brand you could mention that I've loved and I've loved less, and that's just my perspective. It might be the next person that comes along has the exact opposite opinion.
Sure.
So there's no generalizations. I mean, I think certainly the Gibson hollow bodies that were coming out of Memphis before they closed it were the as good a guitars as I've ever played out of Gibson.
Yeah.
And similarly, Fender Custom Shop,
Yeah.
predominantly fantastic guitars. Are they exactly the same as the old ones? Dunno. Do you care? That's the real question.
Sure.
Isn't it? Because a lot of people don't like all the idiosyncrasies of old guitars because they're just too much hassle.
Quite a few people asked the following question in a roundabout kind of way. This is from Joel Plamentuan. You guys talk a lot about the way the guitar feels in hand while playing. Do you think it's purely the craftsmanship and the time taken to make that guitar, or a product of being worn in and played combined with time? I find that electric guitars take a little more time to open up as opposed to an acoustic due to the inside of the guitar being unfinished. What are your thoughts?
That's interesting about the unfinished thing. There's no doubt that guitars change over time, no doubt whatsoever.
My telly, when I first got it, it's always sounded fantastic, always. But it was really hard to play. The nitro hadn't cured properly. It was like playing with tapioca pudding on your hand, And it's taken 2,000 gigs to get that guitar to a point now where it's magic.
Yeah, so it's gaining some mojo of a vintage guitar.
Yeah, but I remember going into Neil's Guitars and Amps in Manly Beach in Australia, which is where I used to live, and he had two really old Martins. One was beat up and one was brand new. And I took them both down, had a play. The one that looked brand new, same year, it sounded flat, and I mean, it still sounded good, but this old one that had been played and beat up, it was magical. It was magical, and I'll never forget that. There's a lot to be said for playing songs on these guitars.
Well, there's a comment about that in a moment, so we'll reflect on that in a minute.
Okay.
Was there actually a question? What about craftsmanship of modern guitars? Yeah, again, there's nothing to draw really, is there? I mean, but again, speaking purely personally, any of those high-end, high-craft guitars, I usually dislike them instantly because it feels like they've had all the, I don't know, they're so perfect that there's nothing left in it anymore because it's just been perfected to this, I don't know, it's like really heavily finished, and I don't know quite how you get there, but they feel alien to me.
Sure.
And yet you can pick up a $200 Dan Electro, or probably more like $400 now, but $200 from when I remember them first being reissued, and instantly connect with that guitar. No craftsmanship at all in that thing with respect to Dan Electro. Not in terms of traditional guitar craftsmanship.
Just CNC.
And I would say that if you take Fenders as being cheap guitars, forget the actual price tag just for a second, but in terms of the way they're made, I've always preferred cheap guitars over expensive ones. Absolute opposite with amps.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
So I don't know about craftsmanship. The one brand I would pick out among all of that is Collings, because all the Collings I play feel like vintage guitars to me,
Right.
especially the aged ones.
Right.
But I think that might just be a brand association because I like those guys and I know them.
Yeah.
Do you have any of that? Do you like any new guitars?
I love Johnny Kincaid,
Yeah.
his guitars. But again, I've been there and I've seen how
it's a personal connection.
Yeah, that definitely adds into it.
That comes up. That comes up in a sec.
Michael says, do you guys think in 50 to 60 years from now, future generations will look back at the guitars that were produced in the 80s, 90s, and noughties like we're looking back at the ones made in the 50s and 60s? Also, was having a bit of a rough go Saturday morning at your guys' palpable happiness really helped. Cheers,
Excellent.
guys.
That's good to
It's
hear.
a really interesting question. I had this conversation with Dave Gregory quite a lot. So he knows so much about vintage guitars. He's been on the show. Check him out. He's was in a band with him for many years. The guitar player from XTC. And he is astounded that 70s Strats go for the price that they go for now. Because he owns all the guitars up to that period, and he knows so much about them. But then I have played some great 70s Strats. I think it comes down to, you have to take it on an individual basis, but supply and demand ultimately. I can never see a point where, because how many guitars are Fender cranking out nowadays?
It's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, so it's hard to see that in like 50 years there'd be a shortage of guitars that are made today.
No, I think if any meaningful music is made on them, they'll be well remembered.
Yeah, that's a good point.
As an example of that, the Gem came out in whenever that was, 85, 86, 87, around that time anyway. And Vi moved things on. You might argue that it is a very heavily modified Strat, is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So is it a new instrument as such? I don't know, but I think people will look back fondly on those guitars.
Sure.
I think I get a bit of can I see 60-year-old, 65-year-old people getting teary-eyed thinking about Meshuggah and an 8-string something or other?
Yeah.
Maybe. Why not?
I'm going to see Mr. Vi on Sunday.
Are you?
I am popping into the Steve Vai guitar camp in New York.
We can honk Steve Vai.
Yeah. And going to see Andy Timmons.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And also Devon Townsend. Get it! So I'm going to pop in there for a couple of hours because I'm in New York. And anyway, the guy got in touch and said, if you're around, can you pop in? I said, yeah, love to. So just for a few hours, just to show my face and go, hey.
Very nice.
Be great.
Very nice. So will guitars from the 80s and 90s be fondly remembered in time to come? I don't know. Maybe. Only if any meaningful music's made on them, I think.
Sure.
And there may well be.
50 years, I don't think I'll be around. So, send some spiritual knowledge my way and let me know.
You might be. Yeah, things.
I'll be cranky.
Yeah. Bit broken. It is, however, great to know there are still plenty of vintage guitar cynics out there.
Yeah.
Which is good, because if everyone in the world could think like that, please, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Then the prices would fall and I could buy them all. Robert Twiddy, hi Robert, Terry Ralph Knight, and lots more are of this opinion. This opinion. Eric A says, or Eric A says, so there are some cool guitars here, but I really believe it's easy to get carried away when one knows that the guitars are vintage and have a high price tag. I've played a few old Fenders and Gibsons, and to me they varied from really bad to really great. Of course, that's my opinion on the individual instruments. The owners, however, always rated them as fantastic. There's a lot of truth there. Everyone thinks they own the best Strat or the best Les Paul. Oh, my Strat's the best Strat. That is tedious. There are so many factors that make a great guitar, and I believe many of them have more to do with one's connection with the instrument than anything else.
Of course.
And he then goes on to say, that said, some of the guitars fantastic. That's what you touched on earlier. And I think it's true. But I don't think it should be denied. It's not like you should go, oh, I should be denying this feeling that I'm having now. I should be denying this connection with this guitar because it's important and it's what inspires you and it's what helps you make a connection with music and with the whole reason that we do this thing in the first place.
If you project that to the extreme, look at David G's Strat that sold for $1 million,
Yeah.
pounds, whatever it was. That is that's been hacked to bits.
Yeah.
It's, if you were to walk into a secondhand guitar dealer and see that guitar, a similar one, it'd be worth X. But because of the songs that have been played and how important it is in the history of music, it's worth that. Now you bring that back down to a personal level. It's the same. It's like my telly isn't worth crazy money, but there are songs that I've written on it. There's, it's been with me for so long and done so many gigs on it that it's such a very special guitar to me. It's worth a lot more than it's sticker price, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I think, and then anywhere on that scale in between.
Yeah, I agree. The connection with an instrument, which is either a personal, like Collings is the example I brought up earlier. I knew Bill, and I've got a lot of great memories of him and all the people that work there, because they're all in it. It's art. They're all in it for the passion of doing it.
Yeah, of course.
That rubs off. And that could be the same for any other guitar company you mentioned, but just having that connection makes you feel differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marcus Reeves Brotherhood says, there's some crazy nice tones there. However, I do have a theory about vintage guitars that isn't predominantly about them aging. We all know that handmade guitars vary a lot. Time passing has simply seen the good ones float to the top. Yes, pole pieces age and wood oil evaporates, but I personally think it's a smaller part. Controversial more?
It's what he said.
Yep.
My favourite guitar in that store that day was the Beaton Strat.
Yeah.
That's the one that had been played. Now, whether that was because I wasn't so scared of it, as I was the ones that were in pristine condition, but that guitar was speaking to me because it'd been played a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe. Do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. And that, and I loved that telly. It was a magical thing to play. I think the thing with the Jazzmaster was because I've played so many Jazzmasters and I find them a lot more hit and miss. And that one was magical.
It was hit.
It was just all hit. Yeah, incredible.
Okay, Elliot Taylor, what reading material would you recommend to get started on the history of these guitars and what makes them different from each other despite being the same model? Like when you guys look at a guitar and you know what year it is because of the bridge or the tuners or something like that. There's a ton of great guitar books out there. Check out a company called Backbeat Books. Authors including Tony Bacon, Paul Day, Tom Wheeler. There are many great guitar history books, but if you start with the Fender the Golden Age is great.
That's great.
From whatever that was, 46 to 65 or whatever. I can't remember what the years were. Might be later than that actually. And they're just these very well researched with lots of nice photographs, historical accounts of these instruments. I was lucky enough, I guess, because I was a journalist for many years, so I was sent all those books to review. So you read them, and bizarrely, some of it goes in.
Imagine that.
But yeah, I mean, it's a lifetime study, and certainly when you get to Mike ATB's level, his knowledge is literally encyclopedic.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no book you can read and know it all. That doesn't really exist.
Yeah. Right. Finally, there's Mesmer Social. This is awesome. Jeez. Can we get back to real content? If I wanted to see two guys hard over shiny sing-songy relics, I'd find the mature channel on Pornhub. Probably less gush sploosh faces too.
I'm just pleased that not everyone was happy, Dan.
You can't please everyone.
No, or you could go and watch something else. That is also possible.
It's an option. It's an option.
It's okay.
People, thank you so much for investing the time in the channel that you have. We really appreciate it. 200,000 subscribers.
Big deal.
It's a really big deal for us. In the big world of YouTube, we're a dot.
I honestly never thought we'd get to 50.
Right. Okay. So 200,000 is mega.
Not bad.
Yeah. And so we're really grateful. Massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon who've supported us all this way. We literally couldn't have done it without you.
Look out for an
Yeah.
email this week about Jam Pedals Rattler as well, you patrons.
Yes. Brilliant. Okay, guys, have a fantastic week and we'll see you soon. Bye.